All right, I believe we're live. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Purpose and Pixie Dust podcast. I'm Lindsay Dollinger, the host of the show, and I am so excited for our guest today, Andrea Sager. She is the founder and CEO of Legalpreneur, and you've probably heard her on a podcast or somewhere before because I know I have, and every time I hear it, her talk, I learn something new, and my mind is always just blown away. So, Andrea, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this.
Yes. Okay, let's just dive in. So tell everyone if they have been living under a rock and do not know who you are or what you do, who you are, what you do, how you started doing what you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I am Andrea Sager. I'm just honestly a serial entrepreneur, but I got started with my first business in law school. Not that I wasn't busy enough, but I just needed to make money. And that's what I did. I was like, oh, I'm just going to start a business. Like it's no big deal. But that I always like to mention that first business because it honestly has led me to every next step. Like I feel very fortunate to have trusted in myself to always like lean into what's next and everything that I've done has led me to the next thing. And so I when I graduated from law school, my dream was to have the big law firm job, the big law firm, work your way up to partner and, be a workaholic. And I got that big fancy job. And immediately I was like, oh no, this is not for me. And I was married at the time and we had a son at the time, and I just knew very quickly it was not the place for me. But
Mm.
my now ex-husband, he was staying home at the time with our son, and so I was the only one bringing home money. And so it was really hard to navigate, like, what do I do? And I think that was really the
Mhm.
first inklings of me realizing, okay, there's more to life than being a workaholic and working
Yep.
until you're dead.
Yeah.
And by some semblance, the universe was like, okay, you are not taking action to be doing what you should be doing. And so the universe just kind of pushed me, and I got fired from Big Law, which was
Oh,
beautiful.
yeah. It worked
We
out, right?
What actually happened was we were in Cincinnati, Ohio at the time. We were planning to move to Houston, which is where my family is. And it was a Monday. We put our house for sale on the market. Wednesday, I remember texting my husband at the time. I was like, I'm miserable. We have enough money to hold us
Mhm.
over. Like, can I just quit right now? And he said, why don't you just wait until we have a contract on our house? And if he would have given me like any inkling of yes, do it, I was
Yeah.
going to walk out of that building.
Anyway.
And he was
Yeah.
like, just wait until we have a contract on the house. And I was like, you know what? That makes perfect sense. Like, because we
Yeah.
don't know how long it's going to take to sell the house. So that was Wednesday. Friday, my boss walks into my office, my boss, my mentor, and I knew immediately what was happening. And I'm like 5 minorities rolled into one. And so I always knew, I always tell people I manifested getting fired because I knew they would have to offer me a severance package. And that's what happened. They basically were like, hey, you can either be on this performance improvement plan, because it just wasn't working out on either end. And they said you can, be on this PIP, or you can take this severance and just go now. And I was trying to look sad, like I was thinking about it,
Yes.
but and
You're
they, it
like
was
straight face, straight face.
yes, it was a Friday morning, and they were like, you know what? Why don't you go home, take the weekend to think about it? And I was like, okay. And they left my office. I remember I texted my husband. I was like, this is the best day ever. I just got fired. And so I'm on top of the world because I already had clients basically, I had people that were waiting on me to go out on my own because they just couldn't
Mhm.
afford the big firm rates. The big firm didn't want to serve small businesses. And so I'm on top of the world. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, this is the best day ever. I get home and my husband is pissed. Like,
No.
not happy at all. Like not understanding how I got fired and not seeing like that I'm seeing this as the biggest blessing ever.
Yeah, yeah.
So I literally launched my law firm that night and I had my first client. And it I'm not going to say it was all like uphill from there, but it's been
Right.
a beautiful journey. I've been exclusively serving small businesses for the past 5.5 years. And it's just something that I've been truly passionate about. Started my law firm. And then at the end of 2021, by this time I was divorced and I realized I had more clients than I wanted in my law firm. And
Mm.
we had Legalpreneur as a side hustle at the time where we were just selling the contract templates. And I had always had this idea to go all in with Legalpreneur to really build out a platform for small businesses. And so at the end of 2021, I was like, it's time, it's now or never. So that's when we decided to basically slow things down in the law firm to dedicate to legalpreneurs. So I
Mm,
would say I've been full time with legalpreneurs since the end of 2021. And our goal is to really help small businesses cover their assets and get lawyered
yeah.
up. And then we also help attorneys build the law firm of their own dreams. So we
Oh.
now basically marketplace ish. And
Mhm.
it's beautiful that we get to serve so many different people in so many different ways.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't realize the part about you guys helping attorneys as well. Like I didn't know
Mhm.
about that side of the business, so that's really awesome. So, for the entrepreneur listening to this, what are the ways that they can currently work with you? Because I know Legalpreneur, I feel like has a ton of different, like you just started mentioning, but what are
Yeah.
those ways? What does that look like?
Yeah, so the first thing, basically, we can take care of all of your legal stuff. And I would say the first step is getting our legal checklist. So it's at it's thelegalpreneur.com/legal checklist, and actually
Mhm.
slash free checklist. I'll give you the link and everything. But basically, this checklist teaches you the legal things you need to know, like your LLC, contracts, intellectual property, trademarks and copyrights. And then it also gives you the checklist of, okay, this is what you need when you need it, and then an annual checklist, because the legal stuff's never just completely done. It is also, hey, there's things you have to do every single year. And so we cover all of that in the checklist. And what we actually started doing now is, once you get the checklist, you go through it, there's we offer a free business audit. So what we have found that everybody's business is different, and so everybody does have different needs, and it's hard to figure out it's hard to say what needs people need without really dissecting into their business. And most attorneys charge for this, like to have a consult with most attorneys, like they're going to charge you. So we do the business audit for free, go over that, basically let you know, basically give you the prescription, like, hey, this is what you have in your business. Like, you may already have some things, but this is what you also need to be fully legally protected and really set yourself up for success in business. Because what I see most is a lot of small businesses, they're like, oh, I'm too small for this, I'm too small for that, and they're like, I'm just a side hustle. But really the end goal is to be full time or to really be a true business owner. So I tell people, hey, you have to act as if business owners, this is what business owners do. And if you want to be a business owner, you have to do these things. So
Ooh, I
you
love
really
that.
want to, yeah, you really want to make sure that you are treating it from like a business from the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that was gonna be my next question. At what point do you recommend that people work with you? Is it like from the very beginning, like it's easiest from that way? I was gonna say, I feel like it's probably really hard when people have been in business like 2 years and then it's like almost, I don't want to say too late, but you're not covered for
Well,
that first 2 years of if
exactly.
something
And
happens, right?
I always say you've waited too long to work with an attorney if you now need an attorney. When
Yeah.
I say need, it's, oh, I got a cease and desist letter, I got sued, or this is happening, and that's happening. If you
Yeah.
wait until you need one, you've waited too
Mhm.
long.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of, is it harder to get protected? It's typically just more expensive.
Yeah.
And when you take the proactive approach, we are making sure you're set up the right way from the beginning. And so Legalpreneur, our signature product is our Legalpreneur membership. This gets you all access to your own attorney. Basically, you hand us your business and we take care of all the legal stuff for you.
Oh, cool.
And so it's unlimited emails with your attorney, you get a phone call every month, document review, all the contract templates that you need. We do a trademark filing for, like, everything's like, that's the all encompassing, like, hand it to us and we'll take care of it for you. And with that, with the membership, you really don't have to think about it anymore. Because for a lot of small businesses, they're like, oh, I don't want to think about this because it seems scary, it's intimidating, and it's because of, everything in the media, like, oh, this legal battle, this $1 billion legal battle, whatever. But it doesn't have to be like that at all, especially when you're a small business owner and you're just starting out. It doesn't have to cost very much money at all to get your legal stuff taken care of. And I always tell people everything is figure outable. Love Marie Forleo.
Mhm.
Um, So everything is figure outable. You can do it all on your own. I'm not saying like, hey, you have to work with an attorney, you have to work with a legalpreneur, you have to do this or that. Just get it done. Like
Yeah.
that's rule number one. Just get it done.
So, what are some of the most common um, areas, I guess, that a small business needs protected? So, let me just give you a little background. A lot of my listeners are network marketers, direct sales, online tutors, or some sort of an online service provider. And
Mhm.
then, or they create their own products, whether they're digital products or like crafts type things. So, is there anything like off the top of your head that you're like, okay, these things, these people probably need to have?
Yeah. So number one is your LLC, and you want that from day one. And I'll explain why. Because if you go to any Facebook group, you're like, oh, should I be an LLC or a sole proprietor or an S corp? You'll get a million different answers from a million different people, and people in the accounting world will typically tell you one thing that is actually not very legally accurate. So I'm always of the belief that you should be an LLC, which is a limited liability company, from day one. The reason is, so the whole purpose of an LLC is to protect you from liability. So you personally will be protected from the debts of your company. And if you're thinking, oh, I don't have any debts, I don't have any assets that need to be protected, just hear me out. So that's the purpose of the LLC. It protects you personally. Now, if you're thinking, I don't have assets that need to be protected, or the company doesn't have any debts, anything that you do today as a sole proprietor, so before you're an LLC, anything you do today, if somebody has a claim against you or the business, they can come after that years from now, even if you are an LLC at the time of the lawsuit or whatever's going on. So the way I illustrate is like today's day one, and you heard, oh, just wait till you're making $100,000 in your business a year to file the LLC, which is a very common thing that I hear. So you're like, okay, I'll wait. And then tomorrow you blow up overnight on TikTok, and now you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so day three comes along and you remember, oh, I need to file the LLC. So you do. So now you are an LLC and you're set up correctly. Well, then day 100 or day 1000 comes along and you get sued for what happened on day one or day two. And you get sued and you're like, okay, well, this sucks, but at least I'm an LLC, so I'm personally protected. Well, that's actually not the case because you were not an LLC the day the act happened. You were not an LLC on day one or day two. So, in order to protect against your future assets, to protect, future debts, anything in the future, you have to be protected today. And the LLC really isn't it is not a big expense at all,
Yeah.
but it is a necessary expense. Like you do have to spend money, but it will pay off down the road. And a lot of this legal stuff, it's not as sexy as sales and marketing, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have an immediate ROI and an immediate profit benefit. But when you properly legally set up your business, you're setting yourself up for future success and potentially for passive income in the future. So, one of the true forms of passive income is royalties from licensing. That comes from licensing your intellectual property. That's why we preach about intellectual property so much, because we're set not just helping small businesses get protected from help protect their creations, but we're also setting them up in the future for passive income to get those
Mm,
royalties, those licensing fees. So Disney, they're the number one licensor in the world. They make over $50 billion per year through licensing.
it's
And
crazy.
that's everything you see in Target, Walmart that is sold by Disney or that is like Disney themed,
Yep.
that's not sold by Disney. The only thing
Right.
Disney did was sign a piece of paper that said, "Yeah, you can actually create these products and sell them, but we get a cut of it."
Yeah.
That is passive income.
Yep.
And the other example I love to use is Nike. So obviously we all know Nike, and this would never happen. But if Nike had all of their products, their physical merchandise in one warehouse, and that warehouse burned down. Because people think that their physical goods are their most valuable asset.
Hmm.
It's not the case, because if
Yeah.
Nike had all their merchandise in one warehouse and all of that merchandise burned down, would Nike be out of business?
No.
No. That's because of the intellectual property, the IP, the value in the brand itself.
Mm,
Yes, they're selling products to make money, but they wouldn't have those products to sell if they didn't have the intellectual property.
makes sense. Totally makes sense. So for my friends listening, my listeners, if when they're setting up their LLC, should they do it in the name of the company? Should they just do like their first and last name and then it kind of is a blanket over all the things that they do? Do you have a recommendation on that?
So it'll depend on your business goals, but for the most part, I mean, it can be any name you want. So your LLC could literally be named XYZ LLC. And then however you're conducting business, it can be filed as a DBA, doing business as, which is
Mm,
owned by the LLC. But
gotcha.
I mean, just for example, Legalpreneur, we started as Legalpreneur LLC. And then
Mhm.
we knew, okay, we want to get investors. So investors typically always want a corporation. So then we
Yeah,
switched to a corporation, but it's still legal. So it's Legalpreneur LLC. Now we're Legalpreneur Inc.
gotcha.
But if we wanted, we could be, I mean, we could be Andrea Sager LLC, DBA Legalpreneur, or
Gotcha.
Andrea Sager Incorporated, DBA Legalpreneur.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Because I have seen some pretty crazy names for LLCs. So I was like,
Yeah,
how
because
does that
and
work?
what throws people off is, and do not confuse LLCs with trademarks. And why
Yeah.
this throws people off is because when you file an LLC, every state does a search for
Mhm.
that business name in the state.
Yeah.
Now, why this is not the same as trademarks is number one, your state is only searching that state. They're not searching other states. And even if you are, let's say, I'm Andrea Sager LLC, the law firm, and then there wants to be Andrea Sager Corporation for a mechanic shop. That's not trademark infringement because it's not the same goods or services or similar goods or services. However, if they try to file that corporation in the same state, they'll get denied because of the same
Mm,
Andrea Sager name.
yeah, that makes sense.
And so you can get approved for an LLC and still be infringing on somebody's trademark. And you can
Yeah,
also get your LLC denied and it not be infringing on anybody's trademark. So don't let those two
to
confuse you, because
confuse you.
so many times we have sent out like a cease and desist letter for a trademark and I get, sassy responses back like, this is so wrong. I filed the LLC, my state did a search, and
Mm,
then I have to explain. And yeah, it can
yep.
get messy. So make sure you know the difference.
Yes. I actually wanted to ask you about trademarks because I've had some conversations in the past year with some clients about trademarks because they had coaches who didn't explain to them, because one of them, particularly that I'm thinking of, and I think she might be on here right now, um, was using a name and I for her Instagram and all that. And I'm like, like that's such a catchy name. Like I have you checked just to make sure that that's not trademarked? And we looked and it had been trademarked, like 9 different ways. And so can you kind of just give a little rundown? What is a trademark? Why is it
Mhm.
important to have? And why is it also important for us to check that no one is using whatever Instagram, whatever name we're getting ready to come up with already? Because it kind of stunk for her because she'd been doing
Mhm.
this online for like 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
So kind of give us that lowdown if you don't mind.
Yeah, so trademarks are your brand identity. This is anything that identifies your brand name, your logo, your slogan, a product name, a service name, a course name, your podcast name. There's so many different things that can be protected with a trademark. So it's not just like this list of things can be protected. It's if it identifies your brand somehow, it can be protected with a trademark. So most businesses have more than one trademark that they should be protecting. But absolutely, you should be protecting at least your brand name. And what confuses people is what is trademark infringement, because it's not just the same exact name. It's anything similar enough to where consumers are likely to be confused. So you can have a different but similar name than someone and it be infringement. And two businesses can also have the exact same name and it not be infringement. So Delta Airline and Delta, the kitchen sink faucet company, same exact name, not infringement because they're in two completely different industries. Now, Andrea, my law firm, Andrea Sager Law, and by the way, legal names as well need to be protected. Andrea Sager Law is protected with a trademark. If there's Andrew Seeger or Sager Law Firm, that's infringement. If it's the Andrea Sager Legal and Associates or any variation thereof, it is infringement. Now, if there's Andrea Sager, the handbag company, that's not infringement
That makes
because
sense.
it's not likely that my clients would think that I have a handbag company.
Yeah. So, like, my podcast is called the Purpose and Pixie Dust Podcast. So, for people listening, someone couldn't come up with a podcast for women in business and call it um
Pixie and
Pix
Purpose.
yeah, Pixie Dust and Purpose or
Yeah.
Purposeful Pixie Dust or anything like that, correct?
Yeah, that
Okay.
would most likely be infringement.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, that makes total sense. But not if it were something completely different. Like
Right.
if it
So if there
were
was
a
purpose and
perfume
yeah,
or
exactly.
something.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yep, that makes total sense. Yeah, the person who I'm thinking of, I mean, they were doing very similar things. So, but she came up with a new name that's much better.
Beautiful.
But now, though, if she loves it, she should probably trademark it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And right now the trademark office is way behind ever since COVID hit because that
Yeah.
many more businesses were filing trademarks. And
Mm,
so it's taking at a minimum 13 to 14 months to be registered. So if you want that trademark protection, you should get started sooner rather than later. And you can always just shoot me an email, Andrea@andreasager.com for more information about trademarks. That is my favorite area of practice. I am
okay.
actually ranked number 27 out of 40,000 trademark attorneys in the United States.
Oh, get it, girl.
Yeah, the rankings came out last year and I've never ever like cared about rankings or anything.
Mhm.
And but then because I saw it and I was like, oh, whatever, just these rankings. But then I looked into it. I was like, wow, they actually like they aggregated real data. They didn't. Most lawyer lists are like, oh,
Mm.
top lawyers for this, whatever, and most of those are just like pay to play. But they
Yeah,
just like aggregated all the trademark data, and I was like,
nice.
wow, this is actually something to be proud of. So
Yeah.
I had to like force my
Congratulations.
thank you. I had to force myself to like celebrate myself around that.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I
that's so
actually am proud
important.
of that.
Oh, good. I love that. Well, congrats. So everyone
Thank
needs
you.
to ask their trademark questions. And we do actually have a question in the chat. How do you find out if something is trademarked versus being used without a trademark?
So this is tricky. You can always search the trademark website, which is uspto.gov, and you can search the test database.
Mm,
However, like I said, infringement is not just the same exact name, it's any similar names. So you
yep.
do want to make sure that you are searching for similar names, which can be hard, difficult to know like, well, what is similar? Like what are all the possibilities? And this is where it
Mhm.
does benefit working with a trademark attorney because we know how to find those similarities.
Yep.
That way we know, because when I file a trademark application, it's not like I'm filing and we're hoping to get approved. I'm not filing an application unless I know we're getting approved.
Yeah.
So it's such a long process. It's like we're not wasting your time or money. Like we're filing
Mhm.
this when we know we're going to get approved.
Yeah.
um Now, if somebody doesn't have the trademark but they are using it in business, when it comes to trademarks, whoever is in business first has the rights to the trademark. And
Mm,
I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because there's so many nuances and
yeah.
so many things that can happen. But let's say somebody else is using this name, but they don't have the trademark, and you want to go file the trademark. You will most likely get approved for that trademark as long as there's nothing else similar registered. However, if that other party finds out about you, or if you get the registration and you're like, hey, I have this registration, you need to change your name. Well, if they get
Mm,
savvy and go hire a trademark attorney to help them, that trademark attorney is going to look and say, hey, you were in business first. You actually have the rights to this trademark. So you can petition to cancel their trademark.
mm,
So you can petition to cancel for the first 5 to 6 years that you're registered. Now, like I said, there's a lot of different variables in there.
Yeah.
So, is it worth it to get the trademark if you know somebody else is using it? It depends. Because when that happens, if let's say, they hire the attorney and they come back and say, "Hey, we're actually going to petition to cancel the trademark." Nobody wants to go through a cancellation proceeding. It is a lawsuit. It's a lawsuit
Yeah.
within the trademark office, and it's not fun for anyone. Like, that can
Right.
cost you, 20, 30, 40, $50,000.
Wow. Wow.
So, but that's on both sides. So, a lot of times when it comes to that, there's negotiating and you come up with an
Hmm.
arrangement. But just know that there's a lot of complications in there. So it's always best to just file from the beginning and get that registration.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Let's switch gears and talk just super briefly about copywriting. At what
Hmm.
point is it necessary to officially get something copywritten? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Copywritten?
I
um,
think it's copyrighted.
Copyrighted. It sounds so weird to say that. Copyrighted. At what point, so say I have like an ebook or
Mhm.
materials that I've created for a course, is it necessary to get those officially copyrighted, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so copyrights, these are your creative works, your content, your photos, videos, blog posts, ebooks, website copy. It's all your creative work.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about copyrights is you automatically have federal protection the moment the work is created. So the moment you snap a photo on your
Yeah.
phone, you automatically have a federal copyright on it. You don't
Okay.
have to have a registration.
That's what I thought.
However, you cannot sue someone for copyright infringement unless you have the registration, or you all and you if you have that registration before somebody infringes, you're eligible for what's called statutory damages.
Gotcha.
Long story short, statutory damages just make it easier for you to prove damages in court, and the
Hmm.
other party has to pay your attorney fees. Because the thing about copyrights is, let's say you made this design or you made this course. So you created a course and you
Yeah.
sold it and you made 10 sales. You made $1,000. I'm just making pretty
Yeah.
round numbers here. And then somebody steals the course and they go and sell it and they make $1 million from that course. It's so easy for you to say, "Hey, I was damaged $1 million," but you weren't necessarily, because even
Yeah.
though they made $1 million, that doesn't mean you would have made $1 million if they didn't sell it.
Yeah.
So copyright cases can get really complicated. It's hard to
Yeah.
prove those damages,
Yeah.
um, but it's still absolutely worth it. Like, you should be paid what you're worth.
Right.
But that's why you want to have the registration, is to be eligible for those statutory damages, because
Yeah.
that does make it a lot easier to prove in court.
Okay. Yep. That makes perfect sense. Okay. Websites, because that's something else that a lot of my listeners have. What are some of the basic, I'm trying to ask what they are without giving them away, because I've bought a few of the templates from you guys.
Yeah.
What are some of the pages, I guess pages you
Yeah.
would call them, on your website that legally we should have if we
Mhm.
have our own website?
Yeah, so if you have a website, which if you're listening and you're an entrepreneur, you probably have a website, there are two things that you want to make sure you have on your website, and that is terms of use and a privacy policy. A privacy policy is required by federal law, and this governs what private information are you collecting, how are you using it, how are you storing it, what are you doing with it, like just answering all those questions about the private information. The terms of use, that's the contract between you and the visitor of your website. If somebody can purchase on your website, it can also be the contract between you and the purchaser on your website.
Mm.
Terms of use are not required by law, but still a very, very good idea to use them.
Yep.
And like you said, Lindsay, we have this templates on our website. So we sell our contract templates. All this is included in the membership, but if you want just the contract templates, we sell them by different niche bundles.
Yeah.
So if you are a business coach, you would go and purchase the coaching bundle. Every
Mhm.
bundle that we have, though, includes a privacy policy and terms of use. So
Yep.
every bundle has those, then you have the extra contracts for your niche.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I highly recommend, guys, if you are in one of those industries, especially if you need contracts for something for client work or whatever, that you check those out.
Mhm.
Um, because also, if you are working with one on one, small group, any sort of service provider, those contracts
Yeah.
probably are. That's probably one of the things I would assume that you deal with most. Maybe not
Mhm.
if you're doing a lot of trademarks specifically, but I would assume that your company does a lot with contracts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
why we started Legalpreneur. So Legalpreneur, our first product was the contract vault, and that
Mhm.
was our contract templates. And essentially what happened was a lot of people were coming to me asking for me to draft a contract for them, but they were so
Mhm.
new in business. Like I would take them through my process to draft the contract for them, but because they were so new, they didn't know what they needed in the contract. So they just
Yeah.
ended up using my template anyway. And after that happening for a while, I was like, we just need to sell these templates and people
Yes.
can fix it themselves. And then
Yep.
what I always tell people is start with the templates,
Mhm.
and because we put best practices in there. And then as you get more experience in business, you'll learn what works for you, what doesn't work. And then once you have that information, then you graduate to a custom contract. And by
Mhm.
that time, you'll be more experienced in business, you have more money. And not that it's,
Right.
that expensive. I mean, it doesn't cost a lot of money. I would say like if you want a custom course contract, probably $500 to $800, depending on where you go.
What it is. Yeah.
So still not a ton of money. And by the time that you're ready for that, you are more
You'll be
experienced.
making that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's not going to be anything for you. It's like, yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Right. Yeah. You're like gonna gotta cover myself, and $500 or $800 is much better than the alternative for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Exactly.
I'm just curious, do you ever run into a specific need from clients that are network marketers or direct sellers?
So what I see from those businesses are specifically an LLC. You always want to have your LLC. And if you have an LLC for your actual network marketing, you want a different LLC if you're going to be coaching.
Hmm. Interesting. Why is that?
Different risk levels. So
Okay.
with the network marketing, you're essentially selling products.
Uh-huh.
And then with coaching, it's a service.
Right.
And ultimately, when the question is, hey, should I have it under the same LLC or separate ones, it just comes down to how much risk you can tolerate and that you want to tolerate. And to be, have the lowest risk possible, you just want separate LLCs.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. I never
Yeah.
would have thought about that.
Yeah.
I just assumed you could stick them all under the
Well,
same and it
you
would be
can. Absolutely, you can. It's
yeah.
not illegal to do
Right,
that.
right.
But my goal, it's my job to make sure your risk is as low as possible.
Yep.
And having the separate entities, that's what lowers your risk. And then for network marketers, besides the LLCs, of course, if you're in coaching, obviously you want
Mhm.
to have those contracts.
Which one is normally higher risk that you see, the coaching side or the product side
I think the coaching side, because when it comes to the products, you do have the back, like
of the
typically the
company?
company has your back,
Mhm.
in a
Yeah.
sense. And then for coaching, you're on your own. Um, and you just want to make sure that you're buttoned up as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Just out of curiosity, do you ever see company versus the, independent
Network marketer.
contractors? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, I bet you
Yeah.
have some good stories with that.
I've had some very interesting story. I think most of them are like the bigger one, like the big deal issues are when a new network marketing company comes and poaches like a high earner from another company, and that
Yep.
new company doesn't fulfill their promises, and it's like, what do we do here? Or I had one probably like 4 or 5 years ago where the company just
Terminated someone.
terminated the relationship, and it's like, the seller was just like, I honestly have no idea like where this is coming from.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I have been in the industry, network marketing myself since 2016, and I have heard the
Mhm.
stories from like inside, of like
Mhm.
the company did this to someone, the company did that.
Mhm.
And it also is a good reminder though for network marketers that like even though you are independent contractors, you are still under the umbrella
Mhm.
of a company, and they can do something like terminate you,
Yeah.
like making sure to read up on that contract because you are in a
Mhm.
contract with the company. And I think a lot of network marketers tend to forget that. And that can
Yep.
be a tricky
100%.
thing.
100%.
Yeah. And with me as their coach, I'm like, I mean, I can't tell you, like, you have to go and read your contract, like
Yep.
read the contract, take the contract to a lawyer, have them, like if it's in there, it's in there.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, this has been super informative. I could
Mhm.
literally pick your brain for like another hour with all of them. Like, okay, so what does this mean? What does this mean? But again, super quickly, tell everyone where they can find you, where they can connect with you, how they can work with you even more. And I'll be sure, guys, to put the links for all this in the show notes too.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and TikTok. I love TikTok at the
Okay,
Legalpreneur.
awesome.
On Instagram at the Legalpreneur and at Andrea Sager Law. We do have the Legalpreneur podcast. It is currently on a hiatus, but there are currently still 300, almost 300 episodes
Nice.
up that you can listen to. Still a ton of good legal information,
Yeah.
legal education, and then of course the legalpreneur.com, and you can definitely get that free checklist and that business audit. You can get that in the checklist as well.
Awesome. Well, Andrea, thank you so much. We really appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Friends, if you were listening to this, please take a screenshot, share this in your stories, tag us so that we can have a conversation with you. And really thank you for listening in, and go out there and protect your businesses.
Yes.
That's how I'm gonna end this one today. Protect your business, protect yourself. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.